So I know we took a little longer, but that's okay. I want to dive right into our invited guest speaker this morning, as Reverend Mary suggested, told us. Um, we have Reverend Dr. Neal Presser with us this morning. Uh, it's 7:15 his time. He's in Southern California, so we are glad that he is able to join us. But you know, Neal and I have known each other for many years, and I think in various crossroads, and it's so I think same with Reverend Mary. I think she mentioned that you've known each other for more than 30 years. Is that correct? Um, but Neal is he was the 220th General Assembly moderator of the PCUSA, and he has served in multiple capacities in different level, uh, whether Presbyterians or outside of the Presbyterian circles, including the World Council of Churches. He served on the chair of the Board of Trustees with the Presbyterian Foundations. Um, he's also very active in terms of academics, and currently he is the vice president of student affairs and vocational outreach, and the associate professor of preaching and worship at New Brunswick Theological Seminary. He also has served at other seminaries such as Fuller as well, and so there's a lot that I want to that can talk about Neal, but I want to refer you to his website, nealpresser.com, and you can read a little bit more about him and connect with him. He's a very reachable person, and if you email him, he'll always respond back to you, wherever he is. He's all over the place. Could be different corners of the world. He will always respond back to you. One note I want to add to it before I officially invite him to speak. And during the pandemic, he started this prayer group at 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 West Coast time. He connected people from all around the world to have a prayer time of prayer. We did that for 3 years, almost 3 years, until the so-called pandemic kind of halted. So that's amazing. I really appreciate him taking the time at 5:30 every morning just to connect people from around the world during the time that we need to have that connection in prayer and lifting up any prayers that we may have during the pandemic. So without further ado, I want to introduce Reverend Dr. Neal Presser. And he's going to share maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes of his time, and then we open it up to any Q&A that you may have. Please hold your Q&A, hold your questions until later on. Or if you have something you want to put on the chat, we'll look that up and then ask Neal later on. So, okay. Neal, you may unmute. Oh, you already did.
Samson,
Welcome.
thank you.
Welcome.
Samson, thank you. Thank you, Samson, for the generous welcome. And Mary, thank you so much. My dear friend, we've known each other indeed almost 30 years. And so it's a remarkable friendship and relationship. And thank you for your leadership. I think all of us are in transition. So you're actually you're way ahead of the game in this time of transition, I think, for American Christianity, for the PCUSA, and many presbyteries across the country. So transitional presbyter, I think, is a common descriptor for where all of us are. And so I want to as well extend blessing to each of you, inquirers and candidates, in all of the contexts that I've been in Presbytery and the various levels. When I've been asked by my presbytery to serve in different places in the presbytery, there's one committee that I always and have stayed with in being a minister member of a presbytery, whether it be out there in New Jersey or here in California, and that is the CPM. The Committee on Preparation for Ministry is my bailiwick, is where I hang out. It's not Committee on Ministry. It's not on some other committees, but it's CPM, and I've served consistently in CPM. I have a heart for you all who are discerning the leading of the Holy Spirit, where you are trying to discover and to discern what is the Lord calling me to do in this season of life, and hopefully for a lifetime. And it's always a joy um, to spend time, like over the course of several years. I don't know how many years you all have, each of you have spent in this preparation for ministry season of your lives, but it is an exciting one. I know that it is risky. In many ways, you're walking in faith. You're investing time, money, energy um, on your part, as well as the people who love you and who are supporting you. And so I want to offer blessing upon blessing. I have the good fortune and blessing now, in my role as Vice President of Student Affairs and Vocational Outreach. That's my full-time job, to discern with prospective students and with our current students at New Brunswick Seminary, what is the Spirit calling you to do and to be. And most of our students are second, third career. Our student body, in contrast to other seminaries, our student body are 40 and above. So they have lived life, they're living life. Some remain in their work, in their non-church work, and they go to seminary to do a Master of Arts in Ministry Studies or a Master of Arts in Pastoral Care Counseling in order to further deepen their Christian witness where they are, right? So wherever you are, whichever degree, most likely, most of you are taking the Master of Divinity, but wherever you are in this season of your life, this is an exciting time because you are being afforded the privilege of reflecting, right? I mean, by nature of your inquiry or candidacy season, this is the prime time in which you are being almost required to reflect upon, what do I believe? What have I believed? What do I believe? What is my theology of ministry, of church, my understanding of Jesus? What is my understanding of myself? What is my existential purpose of being here as a human being? I mean, those are profound questions that most folks are not given the opportunity, because we are, as human beings, we are going from point A to point B, going through life, going through the motions. But you in this season are given that opportunity. And I think that is one of the mainstays and one of the things that I love about being Presbyterian, the intentionality of doing so in community. I was raised Roman Catholic and United Church of Christ here in the USA. My father's side Roman Catholic, my mother's side United Church of Christ in the Philippines. So mixed home, ecumenical, if you will. And I grew up in a Filipino UCC congregation in the San Francisco Bay Area that's still there. I grew up in that church. I was mentored and discipled by a Southern Baptist pastor, and then became Presbyterian Church USA in the late 90s. Went to the University of California, Davis, political science history. As most poli-sci majors do, I thought I was going to law school. I was an intern for U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein when she was new to the Senate, and thought that I was going to, go to law school, get a PhD in poli-sci, work for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and run for the 5th Congressional District, which neighbors Speaker Pelosi's district, the one that encompasses part of the San Mateo County and the San Francisco Airport. I thought I was going to run for that seat. And the Holy Spirit had a way different plan that I out of left field. And here we are. And it was shortly thereafter, actually, that went to seminary and was called by my new denomination, the Peace USA, by God's providence and by a call by a dear friend of mine and Samson's and Mary, Valerie Izumi, in the headquarters at Louisville to serve on the General Assembly Council. And that's where I first met Mary, when Mary was a college president. And on it went. I met my future wife at, of all places, and Samson will remember this, in Houston, Texas, in 2001 at the Moderators Conference for Moderators Convocation for Asian American Presbyterians. So my wife and I met there, and I proposed to her on the floor of the General Assembly Council at the Seelbach Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. So that's how Presbyterian nerdy I am. And it is still possible if any of you are single or looking for a partner in life. It is possible to meet a future partner for life at a Presbyterian conference. That's all to say that our family is committed to this part of the body of Christ called Presbyterian Church USA. But even beyond that, even beyond PCUSA, we are committed to the gospel witness. Let me end this time, because I know that I was given 10 minutes or so, and then most of our time will actually be in the Q&A. There was an article that was posted, and that has been going viral for the last couple of weeks. A minister colleague out in Arlington Heights, Alexander Lang, who I don't know, but know through mutual colleagues, who had announced through his blog and a sermon that he shared that he was leaving his pastorate in Arlington Heights, but also leaving the pastorate altogether. And in this time of great resignation, hashtag great resignation, or great reshuffle, as it were, we in the religious community have not been exempt, right, from that disorientation, reorientation, trying to figure out life and faith, etc. And it's not uncommon. Certainly in these last couple of years during the COVID-19 pandemic, but even before that, those in their first 5 years, certainly 10 years, about I think 30 to 40% will leave the pastorate for all sorts of reasons. And Alexander Lang had his reasons. He stated that in his blog site, and on it goes. Many different folks discern their call. And after 5-10 years or so, some folks will say, the ministry is not for me. To be a minister of word and sacrament is not for me. My response to his note that I posted on my Facebook wall, and which I shared to some of my students, was, I highly recommend the ministry. Even with all of the things that would say logically and cognitively, you ought not to go to ministry for XYZ. I've been at this for for more than 20 years. I recommend the ministry. I had an opportunity in the election of 2020, the notorious 2020 election. I was asked to serve on to run for the school board here. So 25 years after I had left that goal, I was asked, and a window of opportunity was open to me. And I had to discern that, because I knew that if I ran for the school board, I would want to run for city council and then run for the congressional seat here in Southern California. So if I took that step, it would lead to other steps, etc. And I said no. I said no for several reasons, one of which was not having a D or R after my name, after our name, enables us to enter into the sacred space of people's lives. Immediately when one has a D or R after their name, right? Immediately, one half of the population mistrusts you right away, even without you saying anything. I've been a pastor to U.S. senators, to different business leaders here in California. In my prior role, before I became a full-time administrative faculty, was a pastor here in Southern California for a large congregation, affluent, etc. And a lot of folks that I was able to be a pastor. One of the men's professional tennis ranked 8 now. You could look him up on the current ATP rankings. I did his wedding, and that was a pleasure. I would not have been able to do that if I had a D or R after my name. That's all to say that when you are called to the ministry of word and sacrament, we are allowed, we are invited into the sacred spaces of people's lives outside of public view to share the witness of Jesus Christ, to call them to love and to be loved. And that is an exciting thing. And as a minister, to be in community with other ministers like Samson, like Mary, and others, it's a requirement as part of our ordination vows, right? To serve in the governing bodies of the church, to be in community with colleagues. We are by nature, both in our DNA and by our very constitution, to be in community. And so that's what I'd like to offer to you all, that to be Presbyterian, to be in the PCUSA, to be under care, to, if the way be clear by your CPM process, to be called into this ministry, I highly recommend it. I love it. There is no other thing that I would do than to serve in this way. And so I'm excited for you all. And if there's any way that I can be a support or resource to you, I would love to. Lastly, let me just put a last plug, and Samson said that I ought to and can put a plug for New Brunswick Theological Seminary. Even though I'm full-time remote, I'm on campus 3 times a year. All of our degree programs are completed fully online. That's a wonderful thing. And it is a seminary that is committed to undoing systems of power and privilege. So we are ahead of the game in many ways from other seminaries. It is integrated into our faculty and into our curriculum in every class to critique and to reflect carefully upon those systems that perpetuate power and privilege, whether it be gender justice, racial justice, economic justice. And so I'm excited about serving at New Brunswick Seminary in this time. I also serve part-time as an affiliate associate professor preaching at Fuller Seminary here on this coast, also online courses. So straddling 2 seminaries, 2 different student demographics, but it is a wonderful vocation that I enjoy as an extension of my ministry of word and sacrament. And so I'm here to be a support and resource to you. I look forward to your questions and for our conversations in these next minutes.
Thank you, Neal. I used to live in New Brunswick too, so I only been to on campus once on the New Brunswick Seminary. We did have someone in our presbytery who went to New Brunswick, graduated, got her MDiv, and as a Presbyterian, and she was able to fill out all her requirements, and then eventually ordained. New Brunswick is the RCA seminary, am I correct?
That's correct.
And Neal is teaching many of the required courses, polity and Reformed theology, right? For those Presbyterian students, there are a few of them as well. So, and there are a couple of other faculty members who are also Presbyterian. So, I see some hands up. Feel free if you have any questions for Neal. Okay, I see. Okay, let me allow Luis with his hand up, electronic hand up. Luis, please unmute and then lower your hand.
Okay.
I guess I can do that. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
Hi, welcome, Dr. Presa, and thank you for being with us this morning. Welcome. I like specifically what you spoke about with the existential purpose of what we are allowed within the church and within ourselves, how we feel about what our existential purpose is, and how we would apply that to our community. What I really found uh, really eye-opening is having a D or a R after your name and not being able to reach everybody, but only a certain aspect of the community. Uh, while I was in prison, I've known some chaplains, well, some guards distrust chaplains who are more prisoner friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember a prison chaplain once telling the guards that he's not just uh, the chaplain of the correction officers, but he's also a chaplain of those prisoners under his care while he was chaplain there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's something that I really didn't think about. And even as a registered Democrat, you gave me a food for thought. Maybe I should move out of being a registered Democrat. So maybe I could reach both Democrats and Republicans. You made a point, a real strong point there. Uh, I'm part of an organization called the New York State Chaplains Task Force, which is really police heavy, support toward police heavy. And then I can understand the reason why. It's because basically they're first responders. But yet, when a lot of stuff with defund the police came out, the commander for that organization was really critical of that and really took a bold stance that was really appalling to me because truth is truth. You know, and you can't just be one-sided if you're going to be a man of God or a woman of God. You have to speak the truth to power. So this thing with the DRR after your name has really resonated with me, and I thank you for bringing that up this morning.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay. I'm gonna I'm gonna do this alternately between those who raised the electronic hand and those who left the chat. I'm gonna call on Kurt. Kurt, do you want to ask that in person, or you want me to
Sure,
read the
sure,
chat? Yeah, Kurt,
sure.
please.
I think it's nice to first of all, it's important to thank Neal for his really encouraging words and his own journey, which so many of us can connect with it. I certainly can. You know, Neal, I am a second career ordinand, long business career, very enjoyable, but in the background, a call to God was always there, and I finally stopped ignoring it. and and so I'm close to certification right now. I'm living in Cambridge, England, with my family, and we're certainly going to be here for a few more years, 2, 3, 4 years. We really don't know. My wife is doing a PhD, and but I don't want to put aside my first call if I don't have to. So I'm just wondering, and I need to explore with CPM and with others in the PC USA, are there possibilities for overseas ministry and overseas first calls? And my interests are quite broad. It includes chaplaincy, like Lewis. I have done a fair amount of that in prisons in the United States and over here in England as well. But I also enjoy just old-fashioned congregational ministry as well. So that's I'm just curious whether or not that's a possibility, or how should I be thinking about. And if there's not, how should I be thinking about my delayed first call if we can't get creative?
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think you being in conversation with a CPM and certainly with a COM, right? If you are seeking to be to remain as a when certified ready for call, to be a minister member, of a presbytery. If it is here indeed in the New York City presbytery, then the COM will also want to be interested when that time approaches, and then to have that abroad call opportunity be validated, right? To be a validated ministry. And so if it's in Cambridge or whatever might be the case, in order for CPM then to say you are certified ready for call, and then the COM to say, yes, we affirm that call and we recommend to presbytery, it is a validated call, so that you could then be ordained and then called into that and installed into that. To have it validated as well would, on the financial piece, would open it up then to board of pensions, benefits, et cetera, right?
Right.
And so the validation, and Mary will know best about what the COM criteria is in your presbytery of what is a validated ministry. In San Diego Presbytery, I had to validate and do an annual validation of how my administrative faculty role is a validated ministry.
I see.
Right? Congregational ministry is pretty straightforward. Okay, you're a minister of word and sacrament in a congregation. But the Committee on Ministry in presbyteries will be interested to see and to know, how does a particular call, how is that a validated ministry within the ministry of word and sacrament? Is there a component of, for example, proclaiming the gospel? Is there a component of providing pastoral care to those in your community, et cetera, right? Because if you, for example, were to have a job at, I don't know, Goldman Sachs or Trader Joe's, right? That's not a validated ministry.
Right.
Unless you do something in Goldman Sachs where you have, I don't know, Bible study or whatever might be the case, but it would have to be in a full-time or half-time basis.
Yeah, I'm not thinking that way, but frankly, corporate chaplaincy is something that I think is a very interesting topic to me. But,
yeah. Well,
anyway,
and
that's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, and let me affirm the corporate side of peace, because about 5 years ago, I started an MBA. I was nearly done, and I switched over all my credits to a Master of Professional Studies that I'm finishing now through Missouri State. And folks have asked me, why are you going to do that, another master's, when you already have a PhD, et cetera? And I said, here's why. I went to a Credo conference sponsored by Board of Pensions. And most of my ministry colleagues at the Credo conference were not up to snuff with finance, their own personal finance, but their church's finance. And as Samson mentioned, I'm the immediate past chair of the Board of Trustees of the Presbyterian Foundation that deals with investments. And I got tired over so many years of, us minister types deferring to business types. And so I said, we need to be fluent with the language of both Bible and balance sheets, right? So the world of finance, we in the church have a lot to learn from the corporate side, but likewise, the corporate side has a lot to learn from us who teach the Bible, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting intersection for maybe a conversation at another time. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Kurt. Just want to add a small touch. One of our certified candidates, Rosemary, she is getting ordained through her work as a chaplain as part of the validated ministry. So her ordination is November 12th. Just a little advertisement here. So we're all welcome to join her ordination. She's here with our call too. But
that's great.
Anyway, I'm going to switch back to the raised hand. I have Graham Richmond who raised his hand. Please unmute.
Yep. Hello.
Hi.
So whole set of things about chaplaincy. I agree. Everyone should have a separate conversation about that. But thinking about Alex's post for just a minute, because that has made some rounds. I'm curious, in the broader context, because you're in such a unique position of hearing people as they're thinking through their calls to ministry and what that looks like, what kinds of conversations you hear, or if you feel like the conversations around the kinds of things he raised have changed. Like I think I've seen a lot of dialogue around how do you deal with toxic congregations with unrealistic expectations, or how do you set better boundaries around family and church's access to your spouse and kids, or what do you do when that's not actually possible because there are generational changes. Like my dad and I have very different opinions about what it means and how much of oneself a job gets from you, even if it is a calling, and the way that making it a calling complicates the parts of it that are like, but also I am a human who needs rest. So I'm just curious what kinds of conversations you have been having around those kinds of issues, and if you've seen them change in the last several years.
Thank you for that, Graham. To be frank, the most of the conversations I have had are go along two paths. One is, which degree should I do, right? Like which one fits best with my vocational goal, because not everyone wants to do a Master of Divinity. The second path that folks often ask me is, why go through ordained ministry when I could continue to serve in my church in an active way as a leader, as a Sunday school teacher, as a, to remain in my full-time non-church work with all the benefits and all that, without the drama of being in professional, religious, ordained ministry, etc. And by and large, it's that second one. Why go into that when I could inure and accrue all the benefits, whatever that is, right, to serve the church, to serve Christ, without all the hullabaloo about process and the politics of the church, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I compare that to when I do premarital counseling. There's the dating, courting, and marriage. And when couples want to go from the courtship to the marriage, there's a qualitative difference in that. And one of the big differences from the world of let me remain active in my church to being the leader or being the pastor or the teaching elder or minister of word and sacrament is, you're on the other side of the table, and the responsibilities, going back to Ephesians chapter 4, right, where he gave some to be apostles, evangelists, etc. For what? For the equipping of the saints for ministry. Now, it's not to say that those who are non-ordained are not responsible to equip God's people for ministry. Absolutely. We're all responsible by virtue of our baptisms, by virtue of our Christian discipleship. We ought to encourage one another, support one another as fellow believers in Christ. But when you're a minister of word and sacrament in the ordained ministry, I tell folks, you are given the responsibility to serve on behalf of and for the community of the baptized. And so therefore the expectation, and this is where our good Reformed theology comes in, the expectation therefore is that you are the one who will facilitate and guide us, the baptized community, to live out our baptismal calls. You see, that's the qualitative difference. So in a community of the baptized, in a community of the believers, where all are responsible, all of us are responsible in our Christian discipleship, to be the pastor or the minister of word and sacrament in a community, you are not only expected, but you are called to support the baptized, as even you yourself are a member of the baptized community, or the whole community, that is, right? Ministers are not members of the congregation, but of the presbytery. So that's what I would. So those are the two main things, Graham, that I hear from students, prospective students, inquirers, and candidates. It's less of so how do you deal with toxic congregations? I hear that from colleagues who are already in it and who said, "Oh, my professor didn't warn me about that." And it says, yeah.
That makes sense. I'm curious whether that's actually a thing that we should be talking about earlier, I guess, is like Maybe so, and I'll cede floor. But it's an interesting conversation to be like, why is it that you have to go through the whole process before we'll start to be like, actually, when you get into X kind of congregational dynamics, perhaps it would have helped you to know where to draw the line about I'm not a social worker and I have to send you to somebody who is. I'm not your therapist.
Well, and I think a large part of that, Graham, is that each context is different. And like I could speak about some toxicity of some elements, but my 20 years of pastoral ministry wasn't all toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I don't want to poison the well by saying, okay, but to your point, you're absolutely right. How can we point to red flags as case studies to say, yeah, here's some actual things, but you'll also encounter this if you were working at a bank, if you were a bus driver, if you were, in whatever vocation, there's always that toxic person. So how do we name it? It's just an exhaustive list, right? It would be exhausting to say, yeah, here are the red flags and here's a case why you shouldn't, or enter it with these warnings. I put in the chat there, and I hope you all access that. Audrey had asked a question about practices to sustain or to flourish. And it just so happened, Audrey and colleagues, that I offered a lecture at Fuller Seminary in my closing lecture, or one of my closing lectures, in the preaching course that I taught to about 12 or 11 Master of Divinity students. So I offered an 11-point thing, and I actually posted this on my Facebook wall as a response to that minister that I referenced. Here's a way. Here are things that I've learned, and these are things that I try to do, and that have sustained me, and that I'm encouraged still in ministry. There was a question in the chat sent privately, but I'm going to answer it. There was a question from one of you, and I won't identify you since you wrote it directly to me, but and I wasn't sure it was intended just for me, but the question can be applied to everyone. From the wonderfully broad perspective you have, how well or how poorly do you think the PCUSA understanding of ministry is vis-a-vis today's needs? That was a question that one of you asked me directly. And I have to say that the PCUSA is really has a good pulse of the signs of the times. The PCUSA leans into where the hurts and brokenness of the world is, and there would be no other ecclesial tradition than the PCUSA. I'm proud and I love the PCUSA. I'm in a relationship with many denominations through my work with the World Council of Churches, etc. And I love the PCUSA because we take our theology seriously. We have a public witness in the public arena, so we don't hide our faith under a bushel. We have an office in Washington, D.C. and at the United Nations. That's pretty remarkable. And, whether it be gender justice, racial justice, economic justice, environmental justice, the PCUSA and our general assemblies have spoken and have taken positions that for some at the time were far-reaching or irrelevant, but it has shown to be right on the mark. We are not perfect by any means. We have a lot of work to do in our PCUSA family, in our community. Racism is still in many quarters in the PCUSA. I've said that as a past moderator of the General Assembly, that the last bastion of white supremacy and racism in the PCUSA will be those electronic voting keypads at our general assemblies, because those are the last pieces that enable folks to hide their identity and cast their particular bias or prejudice without accountability, right? And so there are many things that we're still working on, but the PCUSA is a wonderful community because we continually read the signs of the times and challenge one another, and challenge, frankly, the ecumenical church when some of our ecumenical partners are reticent or unwilling to speak out against this or that. And we are one who leans into the power of the Spirit time and time again.
We may have time for one more question. I don't see any raised hands. Anybody? Going once, going twice.
And let's be sure to take a group photo, okay, at the end.
Oh yeah.
Photo, yeah.
You want to take it? You want me to take it?
I'll do it. I'll be happy to do it. And if you want to do it as well, Samson.
Oh wait, we have one hand. Ariane. Okay.
You guys hear me?
You're the last questions before we break.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. My sound's been a little bit weird. Hi, Neal. I really appreciate everything that you've been sharing, both about the practicalities and about your vision and your love for the PCUSA, which is rekindling mine as as you're speaking. My question is more about alternative ministries and what you're, as I hear you talking about an encouraging ministry within the church, I'm aware, and just sort of thinking back to what you were saying about the R and the D and being able to reach more people, I'm feeling a sort of vocational shift and call to those people who are interested in church and spirituality, but don't feel comfortable or don't have the history that leads them to feel comfortable coming into churches. And I'm wondering how you see validated ministries, ordination, and just callings for the church work, for the Presbyterian Church to work in that kind of space.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of examples of wonderful, faithful ministries, new worshiping communities, ministries that are creative, that are outside the box. It is up to each presbytery to validate that, right? 173 presbyteries. And so you will want to, to receive a call from a presbytery that is able and willing and has a track record of innovation and has that entrepreneurial spirit to look outside the box. Now, do we need local church pastors? Absolutely, right? The need is so much. I cannot emphasize that. Most of our churches in the PCUSA are 50 members and under, right? Logically, it doesn't make sense. Why would someone be called to a church, that may not be able to pay you full time, et cetera? But the need is there. So I want to emphasize that. As well, there's a need outside of the congregational space, right? Folks in the world who don't want to step into a congregation, into the four corners of a congregation, but yet they want faith. And so how do we meet them where they are? And so insofar as a particular presbytery is able and willing to tap spirit of innovation and risk-taking, et cetera, to go outside of the congregational ministry, more power to that, because I think our goal is to proclaim and to bear witness of the gospel in whatever way we can. And so, yes, I think being in conversation as you make your way through this season of CPM, et cetera, to be in conversation with a presbytery, whatever region of the country that you're sensing the Spirit nudging you, and then to suggest that. And perhaps there might already be a worshiping community initiative that a presbytery is thinking of, that they're saying, hey, we need someone to lead this. Would you be willing? Ariane, right? Ariane, is there?
Yeah.
Ariane, right? Or whomever, right? To serve in these ways. And there are plenty of those. There are plenty of those. It's a matter of the willingness of the presbytery.
Congregational-based initiatives to broaden their reach.
Correct.
Outside of their churches.
Well, and there's some folks where there are some presbyteries where there's a congregation who will then sponsor a new worshiping community. Right. Right? There's that model as well, because a new worshiping community is in many ways, quote, fragile, in the sense that, there's no strong financial base yet, right? And so a congregation in partnership with a presbytery that sponsors it is also another model that I've seen as well. So it's just a willingness, I think, of a presbytery to step outside of the four corners of congregational ministry, not letting go of it, certainly, right? That's still going to be main thing, but how can what happens?
So helpful, yeah. Like how the two can work together also, not as an alternative to congregational ministry, but kind of in partnership with.
That's right. That's right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neal, and for all the good questions, very good questions. And I think I wish we have more time, but I post up Neal's email and his website, and I know Neal is always busy with so many things, but as you can see from his passion towards church and ministry in general, he always enjoyed these conversations, and I think he'll be happy to respond to any questions that you may have. And so feel free to reach out to him, and he'll get back to you. I'm sure he will. So we are at the hour at 11. And
Samson, can we take a quick screen photo?
Yeah, I actually, if you want to take one from your end, that's fine. I already took one from my side too, but if you want to take it,
absolutely,
let's do it. There are
on. Yeah, if your camera's not on, if you would turn on your camera, and then at the count of 3, and I see that there's 2 screens because there's more than
you might have to do it. You have to do it twice. Screen
okay,
1 and screen 2. So everybody got to look at the camera and smile.
Count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'll go to the next screen. Here we go. Again, 1, 2, 3. All right.
All right. Yeah, I'll circulate. Yeah, send me these 2, Neal, and then I'll send the ones that I've taken as well. So I'll send it to everybody. So this way.
Blessings, Neal, and we'll put it on our Presbytery website too.
Perfect.
Or in the newsletter.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Neal.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to pause our recording at this point, and I will let me